I was really lucky to have just had a few breaks, obviously with Sherlock, but also with Tinker Tailor, also with Frankenstein, and being cast in Warhorse. And that all came at the same kind of point where we were supposed to be coming here to do this Broadway production of After the Dance, which might still happen. It might be a film. We don't know. It might. It's something. There might be some life left in it. It was a wonderful experience in London, but I felt that I'd had that experience there, and selfishly, I wanted to make some capital out of this momentum that was building, and I'm glad I did, because I got Star Trek and 12 Years a Slave and August Osage County, and yeah, it worked out well for me. But and the Fifth Estate. So I kind of I was very yeah, I took a gamble and it paid off.
Well, so that decision, as you say, led to all of these other roles that have only further raised your profile since then. And one of the byproducts of that that I want to ask you about is clearly, you know, you are now a considerably more famous person than you were at the beginning of this. And I wonder how that impacts you as an actor, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that part of what makes many actors great actors is the ability to kind of go out, observe other people behaving as they do, and channeling that. And when you become quite famous, I think that it maybe makes that
blown.
Yeah. Yeah. So well, I mean, does that make your life harder as an actor?
There are ways of remaining disguised in plain sight, as Sherlock would say. But you know, and to be honest, there are a lot of famous actors who are still doing great work. So they're obviously managing to observe something of real life, however bizarre theirs get. But yeah, it was a concern in a sense, but what I value more than that is privacy. And there are means and ways to extract yourself enough to be able to observe human nature and work through whatever medium of research or understanding of character or the human condition that it is you need to be able to get that. And surprisingly, you know, some of us do take public transport still. I've got a motorbike as well, and I drive a car sometimes. But you know, I'm not exclusive to the world of everybody else. But I know what you mean. It's now more about being conscious of this sort of thing. We're not having a private conversation. I thought we were. Shit, there are cameras everywhere. But you know, that's weird. That is weird. And you know, you're constantly at the kind of mercy of people who are basically with smartphones walking publishers. So you kind of, and being a performer, understanding what a camera is and what being observed is, I'm very highly attuned to that. So you're right, to switch that focus back so that I'm the one doing the watching is a new craft for me. But I'm managing it. Yeah. And there are still corners of the world that don't know who the hell I am. So that's always good. But there are also an incredibly supportive amount of people that recognize me but let me carry on my business. And it's fine. It's just a sort of skill, I guess, to balance. And it's interesting. I mean, I've got friends here tonight, and you know, they've seen the sort of change where, but you know, basically, and one of them said, Eloise said, you know, the other night, she said, unless I'm actually in my house with you, or you're in your house and I'm with you, I don't get you, because there's always going to be someone that wants to interact, have a conversation, or what's happened last night, we were in a restaurant and this screen just got pushed aside and there was a flash bulb going off in my face, and this was, I was like, wow, that's a first. Yeah, yeah, always lock the toilet door. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you should anyway.
Yeah, that was
but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. It is weird. It's a learning process, and I'm in my infancy of it. But you know, I think some of it's helped by the fact it's happened in my mid to late 30s. So you know, there's a sort of perspective which kind of gives an ability to breathe and try and extract yourself a little bit from the madness, and say no, and just learn that, you know, you can politely decline something or just step back a little bit, but also how to engage as well. And I'm more comfortable in my own skin than I would have been had this happened 10 years ago, without a doubt. So in that way, it's a blessing. Yeah.
So I don't know the exact chronological order of when you did these things, but in the past year, we have seen you, apart from Sherlock, in Fifth Estate, Hobbit, 12 Years a Slave, August Osage County.
Third season of Sherlock.
Third season of Sherlock, and Star Trek Into Darkness. And it's just unbelievable in 1 year. You can't, clearly, it's hard to even imagine how busy you must have been. And so I wonder, you know, do you do anything specific between projects to sort of cleanse the palate in a way, or are you able to jumped from one thing into something completely different relatively seamlessly.
Yeah, I formed a production company. I did a short film that was hardly cleansing the palate. But I do. I try to. I've been really fortunate, and it's a very high class problem to have. But it's increasingly difficult, and it's something I want to try and change in my work pattern. Whereby, the last sort of two. I mean, this is a bumper crop of 5 months worth of film releases coming out from about 1.5 years' work. But in those 1.5 and 2 years before. A lot of projects have dovetailed, and that always makes me anxious because not for fear of repetition, although there is always that fear. But I always choose one of the criteria anyway for my choice of work is to have variation. Selfishly, just to keep myself amused and to stimulate myself in a different way. So, even though I don't know, I had a bank holiday weekend between the end of the 3rd series of Sherlock and Parade's End, and before Sherlock, I literally got off stage. Let me get this right. Yeah, I got off stage on Frankenstein. I think I had about a week before we started filming Sherlock, and I was pretty damaged after Frankenstein. Both Johnny and I were pretty beat up. So, not ideal, but then very different characters, very, very different characters, and it was really weird. I literally was picked up in a car on our last night from the National Theatre, our after party. Got in a car, driven down to Stratfield Say where we were filming. I was on set on a horse, charging with 80 other horses at sort of 8 in the morning with Spielberg going, "That was great, you want to do it again? That's great." And just going, yeah, I think I do, just sort of slightly falling off my saddle. But I mean, such a different kind of rush and experience to finishing a play to being on that kind of a set with live animals. I mean, you cannot compare the experiences. And it was like, what after the what play was that, So it was... That's the most sort of intense turnaround I think I've had. Ideally, yeah, and I think it's important you should have, and I try now to have a shedding period of a bit of time, so I just get rid of the last one, start having some fun, then I just sort of center and go back to neutral and find out who I am. Friends and family are very handy for that, as is travel and just isolation from the madness of it all in any shape or form, and then, yeah, start revving it up for the next one, just slowly cooking the reading and thinking about what the challenges are going to be, speaking to people who know more about my character than I could ever possibly dream of knowing, and relying on the brilliance of the outside-in stuff, whether it be wardrobe or hair and makeup, and then obviously the collaboration all the way through that with the director in conversation, in person, and in rehearsal, hopefully, if there's time. That's the ideal that very rarely happens, but I mean, it would be good. It happens every now and again, but yeah.
And particularly, I think, with you've played a number of people who were real, who are in many cases still alive, and going back to Stephen Hawking right through Julian Assange and others in between. I just wonder how, from what I gather, you're a real researcher, do a lot of preparation, and but yet in some cases you seem to have met with the person, in other cases you elected not to, or you couldn't, or whatever. Just how do you approach it differently when it is somebody who is a real person? Most recently, Assange.
Well, there are two things, I suppose, that are immediate and very obvious, which is that there's a moral responsibility because that person in particular, his life is still very much evolving. His situation is very precarious, and there's a responsibility to not do him an injustice, which a lot of his followers and him said that I did, but I was trying very hard not to. My correspondence with him was to try and eke from him what I could bring to, work the part into something more empathetic. I wanted to meet him, not to study him and then turn him into a two-dimensional arsehole. I wanted to make him somebody who's complex and human and inspirational and extraordinary and unique, and who's done something which is profoundly important for democracy. And I believe he has, and hopefully some of that is reflected in the film. And I think people who are slightly more, is partisan the right word? I mean, as in impartial is what I'm trying to say. Did elect to say that it was that, and if anything, it was slightly more biased towards his point of view. I don't think it was. I think it was fairly balanced. But I understand what I understood and understand what his beef was with it. Quite rightfully, it was based on two poisonous accounts to his idea of what that story was for his experience, and to him, it was something that was, yeah, absolutely antithetical to everything he tried to achieve, and he was dancing on the grave of the box office flop that it became. But I'm still really proud of it as a film, and I'm really proud of my work in it, and I'd stand by it. And if I was offered the part again tomorrow, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I mean, to try and do justice to a man like that. I think he's the only Australian I've met, or I haven't met, but had conversation with or heard opinions of, that doesn't think the accent's good, or that I'm not like him. Every other Australian says I got it, but
it was pretty.
you know, but seriously, there's a real care of duty, and when it's slightly less, I mean, that was very complex because there was a morality that was very current, and it was so politicized. Every action of being involved with it was a political statement, as much as you know, he thought I was sort of working under the auspices of DreamWorks / the State Department. You know, as a hired gun, I really contested that in quite a full email to him. But you know, I feel strongly as an actor that you should be allowed to try and dance with these very complex subject matters, and it's tricky because most of the real people I've played are pretty extraordinary characters, whether it's Van Gogh, whether it's Stephen Hawking, whether it's Julian,
Turing now.
Alan Turing recently, and you know, I can, you know, all we do is the most light, vague interpretation or impression of these people and their true depths and brilliance. And you know, the cinematic art form in itself is something that condenses years worth of experience and moments that stretch out into boring infinity into a eureka moment, or you know, a moment of high drama. Everything about it is riddled with complexity, because especially when it's a real life, you think, well, God damn it, I know from my research, and I know from talking to this person or from my reading, that it didn't happen like this. And it raises a big question. It makes you go, well, why the hell are we doing anything about real people? But yet, we need some access, I think, some narrative access to understanding these extraordinary people in these extraordinary times. So I always look at it, and I know this is a massive get out, but I do always look at it as fictionalized truth. And I think most canny audiences know that. They're going to go to something which has as rich and complex a subject matter as well, yeah, the mathematics of Turing and code breaking, or you know, astrophysics and everything that Stephen's amazing at, and Julian and computer hacking, programming / WikiLeaks and everything that he did. You expect people to come to it with a certain degree of cynicism about, well, this is a film of this, and if I really want to find out about it, it's a conversation starter. It's not a fixed point to judge everyone by. So there's that engagement, and then there is obviously the thing that these people do still exist, and often, not all of them, but obviously, but yeah, not Van Gogh, but you know, there is an audience that already understands these people through a medium, whether it's biographies or articles or documentary. So how do you bring about something that is both new and invigorating and different, but at the same time has an echo of something that has to be a reflection of these people? So that balance between interpretation and impersonation is kind of vital. And yeah, having a really good hair and makeup team, that's always helpful. A good script is also helpful. Good director is ultimately the most helpful thing you could ever have. And I've been very blessed on that front.